What's up, folks? I'm Odd, by the way, and welcome back, actually, to my D&D Hybrids series, I guess, almost. This is the challenge that I've done for myself, and over time, I have not only applied this challenge to myself, but I have also made something for it. So this is my character roller. And I made this in Godot forever ago. If you want to watch the first video that I did with this, I'll explain it a little bit more in detail, get into the fiddly bits of it, because I definitely spent way too long talking about it. And at this moment, I just kind of want to jump right in, but the basic idea is that we are going to be rolling some hybrids via this roller, because you can see we have all of these factors to roll a D&D RPG adjacent character. I probably title all these videos D&D because it's the most common TTRPG. But a lot of fantasy creatures in here, a lot of very generalized names. Sometimes I've switched around some species or generalized them a little bit more so that it's a little bit easier and we don't have to worry about specifics necessarily, although I will probably be looking up D&D stuff on certain classes and characters to use for character backgrounds and definitions and stuff like that. But why we are here is because not only can you roll just a simple D&D character with one species and all these different parameters, but you can roll a hybrid that will give you one option and another random option. And that is what I want to do today because it's one of my favorite things to do. And it's just, you know, I've been making it a bit more random these past couple of times, adding in standard characters. But this time I just want to make a bunch of hybrids again. So I think that's what I'm going to do. So yeah, what we're going to do is just hop right into rolling and see what we get for this for these characters. And a boop. Okay. Oh no. Okay. 6 foot tall, which is not the largest nor the smallest that we've gotten on this, so this is pretty average for this roller. It goes between like 3 and 11, I think. They're a rogue, dragonborn and merfolk, a woman with a very pretty purple skin tone. Ooh. I could work with that. Usually I have issues with this color roller because it is all over the place, because this is the most truly random thing about the generator. Everything else is kind of based off of certain parameters, certain limitations that I had to code into this, but this is just basing it off of certain number values related to every color. All right, so our first character, and this feels like it could fit really well. A lot of the time I'm sitting there like, I don't know. This one, a dragonborn merfolk, it sounds ethereal. So I'm really happy and I want to play around with this. Okay. Closed, right? Jesus. I hear everything out there. This is closed, right? No, it's not. That's why. What? God damn it.
Could you please just stay together for 2 seconds?
Oh, my dad speaking in his giant booming voice and me realizing that I didn't have my door closed. Don't mind me. And then this thing falls over all the time. But okay, next selection. We're gonna do 3 this time, I think. A boop. 7 feet tall. A little bit taller. Literally just a foot taller. A monk. A shifter. Squirrel folk. Non-binary. This kind of cute, like, periwinkle purple, although I don't know how I'm gonna integrate that into this. But, okay. So that is our next selection here. Hold on. Alright. And our final selection for today. Gonna roll our final hybrid. And a boop. Another monk? Do I want another monk? Oh, but the combination looks cool. The height. I might roll again. Yeah. Another rogue. Give me something. Ranger. Ranger works. Halfling Ganassi. That's cute. Part genie. Green skin tone. That does actually make sense. 6 foot tall, 3 foot tall because of that. As the Ganassi side stands out here. Ranger. Okay. And yeah, this over here. If you roll a smaller race, halfling dwarf, divide the height result by 2. Tried to do that myself. Couldn't figure it out. So, and this green could actually probably work for a Ganassi, I think. So, I mean, the interesting thing is that Ganassi already implies that someone is a hybrid. So usually what I take that to mean is that it is, in fact, just a direct genie hybrid with that species. Yeah. And we're already here in clips, so I can refresh you on all of the characters that we have rolled so far. We've got a 6-foot-tall rogue, dragonborn and merfolk, a woman with this nice purple skin tone, 7-foot-tall monk, who's a shifter, part werebeast, and a squirrel folk. They're non-binary. Their skin tone is a nice periwinkle purple, or their main tone, like character tone. That's usually how I tend to interpret it, that it's like their thematic color. And then our final character here, our 6-foot-tall ranger, 3-foot-tall, halfling and Ganassi, non-binary with a green skin tone that could actually work for the skin tone. So, all right. I am going to try and figure out some bases for these characters and make their backstories and stuff like that. So I will throw you guys over to Speed Paint Voiceover and show you what I have done with them when we get there. See you there. First up, we have the Dragonborn Merfolk Rogue. My obvious first thought that came around was a sea serpent style design, and by extension, of course, a swashbuckler rogue. In my spare time designing characters for myself, I guess this is still for myself, but also like mostly for the channel, my pre-existing OCs for stories and stuff, as well as a collaborative project with a friend, I got into making these little simplified designs in a very simple pose to get the basic idea of the character down before moving into bigger designs. I decided to try it out here over having to figure out a character design and a pose at the same time. I knew I wanted that purpley color to be her main scales, and I sort of went from there in a very generalized sea dragon direction. I love adding little luminescent antennae to fantasy sea creatures. It definitely gives a very deep sea vibe. Sometime in the process, I realized a way I could go for the more reptilian inspiration of this character. Iguanas aren't necessarily marine animals, but they are really good swimmers. Like, they can swim for miles through the sea. Maybe this character's dragonborn parent looked and acted a little bit more like an iguana. It would make sense as to how they and her merfolk parent met. Regardless, I thought it would be a cool element to add in some iguana vibes to this character too. These sort of chibi designs aren't anything set in stone, but I will admit to just straight up forgetting the fishnets on the full version. I think it works well without, especially with the scale detailing I wound up doing. The brush I used for the scales was something I picked up. I don't know if it's specifically for scales, but it works really well for them. The Japanese names in clip never help here though. This is Anessa Moore, her friends call her Nessie, a child of a buccaneering dragonborn and her greatest treasure, a mermaid. Anessa briefly lived a life of relative peace when her parents decided to settle down after her birth. Her dragonborn mother's past caught up with her, however. The family was separated in a raid by a rival pirate. Nessie found herself alone, but not entirely. Those who knew her mother took her in, raising her to be just as adept. Years later, she aims to finally find out what happened to her mothers, to hopefully either be reunited with them or to take revenge. Next up, the Squirrel Folk Shifter Monk. This one was more difficult for me to start, mainly because I didn't really know what felt appropriate for a squirrel to shift into. Ultimately, because this isn't their shifted form, I figured I would make them look a little bit more like a predator with sharper ears and some pointy teeth sticking out of their mouth. A shifter being a monk makes sense because they're all about using their bodies as a weapon, right? What's more weapon-like than a beast form? The skin tone I rolled wound up being more of an accent color here, and I went for a more typical gray squirrel pattern. Initially, I was thinking of making the more almost wolfish parts like a hood or pelt, but I wound up just integrating that into their appearance instead. I deviated a bit from the initial chibi I made here, including bringing up the yellow accents into a line on the pants. It makes them look a little bit more like boxing shorts, which I feel like could also really fit a monk character. This is Saber Ungrove. The last name Ungrove among squirrel folk is usually for those found under the grove or those without a grove, basically orphans. Saber was left at a monastery as a kid. A strange contribution to their foundlings, but the monks soon learned why when their true nature began to show. Sharp fangs and pointed ears alluded to a beast lineage. It's likely whoever left Saber was trying to find the best possible life for them. Saber took to training well, using it to find harmony with their inner beast. However, both of their lineages made it difficult to fit in with the rest of their peers. At night, Saber began to take part in beast matches, where they would regularly be put up against larger shifters and even wares, who would think their opponent was a joke until they started fighting. This is where they met Anessa, who, quite impressed with their skill, offered Saber a job. And finally, we have our Halfling Ganassi Ranger. You'd think a smaller character would take a somewhat shorter amount of time to do, but yeah, no. I think it has to do in part with this being a more humanoid character. I definitely still find myself feeling like my human drawing skills haven't quite met my animal drawing skills. This is the curse of having been a kind of a furry as a child. Initially, I also thought I would make this character an Earth Ganassi, thereby being a bit bulkier, but I realized that probably wouldn't work as well with a ranger. Instead, I went essentially the opposite direction and made them a Wind Ganassi. The green wouldn't have been my first choice for this, but I did use it for their hair and eyes despite that. It definitely gives a very ethereal look. Kind of reminds me of a lot of the ghosts in Danny Phantom, especially with the silvery blue skin tone I wound up choosing here. We are a Halflings with Tails household here, by the way. Though I drew this character with a bow, a shooting pose just didn't feel right for the composition I wound up wanting to do. Since the other two characters are facing opposite directions, I wanted this one to be facing relatively forward. I forwent the bow and just did knives. It felt like it fit the character better anyway. This is Sylph Windsoul. It's obvious by Sylph's name that they're of elemental heritage, but no one else in their immediate family seemed to have inherited any of the traits for generations. Either a rendezvous with or the blessing of a djinn resulted in a Lightfoot halfling who truly lives up to that descriptor. Due to their natures, Sylph's parents decided he'd be best off with someone who could teach him some degree of magic, leaving Sylph to train with a hermit on the outskirts of their village. The training came naturally to Sylph, but they couldn't help feeling abandoned. When Sylph's mentor died, he felt no ties to the village and wandered deeper into the woods. Eventually, Sylph came across two strangers in their wood who looked odd, certainly nothing like they'd seen before. Upon further inspection, Sylph met the end of Anessa's blade, but quickly procured their own. Saber stepped forward to join the potential fight, but Nessie called them off. Realizing the two weren't reckless vagrants, Sylph lowered his guard and found an itch for adventure hearing the two's story. Sylph offered to join them, and Anessa, seeing potential and sensing wild magic in them, happily agreed. So those are my characters for this week. Let me know what you think of these. This was definitely a longer and more detailed approach to everything here, from design to rendering. It definitely took a while. Nessie took me the whole first day of this work. Which of these 3 characters do you like best? And as I usually offer for the D&D ones, which would you play? I feel like those aren't always the same answer. I'm really partial to Anessa in both ways, but I could see myself playing Saber too. Give this video a like if you liked it, and subscribe to catch this and other art challenges I do like this in the future. I do a lot of character creation, both from an illustrative and story-based approach, if that wasn't already obvious. And just nerdy stuff in general too. At that though, I'll leave this here, and I'll see y'all next time.